So when I started stand-up, I was actually working at Google. And obviously that's a job that you work really hard to get to. And I had, slaved away at my corporate job for however many years, got to Google, did this workshop to like hone my presentation skills because I would get a little bit nervous sometimes when delivering really dull marketing presentations. But then I entered this world where like nobody gives a crap that I worked at Google. It was like, you're either funny or you're not. Like everything else does not matter. And still some of my best friends in comedy, like I have no idea what they do for money. Like, and it's just suddenly this world where the currency is a completely different currency to anything I'd ever experienced, especially as an Asian person where our culture, it's so focused on your job, your career, your status, your money. Suddenly it was like, are you funny or not? And that was it. And it didn't matter if you're good looking, didn't matter if where you're from, like none of that mattered.
Welcome to the Sonya Barlow Show. My name is Sonya Barlow and I am the host of this very authentic audio and video based podcast. Ultimately, I wanted to interview ordinary people who are becoming extraordinary all over the world. It's me, my camera and my recorder sharing real life, authentic interviews with people on the ground. I really wanted to create something which doesn't necessarily exist on the internet today. And that's no noise, no clutter, to the point conversations with very cool people all over the world. Most of our content, if not all of it, is directed by you, our listener, our watcher, and our audience member. So thank you. If you have any questions that you want to answer, if you want to be a part of the show, or if you're just interested in where we're traveling next, drop me a line, hello@sonyabarlow.co.uk or @sonyabarlowuk. I won't keep you any longer because we have amazing interviews lined up from people all over the world. So let's get straight into the chat.
So I'm a little bit on this wellness journey, and that's because I think I've come from a point of done a lot in a very short period of time, and now I need to refocus my life. And so I don't want to give up carbs completely, but I do think that a big part of how you feel and who you are is what you're consuming.
Yes. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, but also I think it's about experimenting what works for you, because so many people just jump on, people just jump on bandwagons of like this diet or that wellness trend without really figuring out what is right for them, because you can definitely take bits and pieces from different ones to make it work for you. There's no...
Yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I tried to be vegan. It really didn't work out for me because I had a lot of soya then in my system. It turns out that was a little bit intolerant.
Oh, wow.
But most women are. What we don't know
that.
is too much soya is not good for women's hormones.
Oh, wow. Well, that's the other thing. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but so many of these new things, there's not really been much study into the impact, especially on women, because as we all know, historically, a lot of medical research has been done on men, unless it's specifically women's issues. So a lot of long-term impact on women we're not going to know about.
No, but even then, I went to a really good event a couple of weeks ago, which was all about fertility. And turns out from what they were suggesting is that a lot of fertility research has for women's problems were not actually done on women until like the 1990s or something. And you just think that's incredible that they're creating medications and pills and infrastructure, but you're not actually looking at who's impacted by the problem. And so touching on the wellness space, if I want to be good for my business, it's really important that I'm good in my body. And how am I doing that? Because it's really easy. I think the convenient option for me, or the lazy option or the easy option, is just eat what's there, not really worry about nutrition, and not really focus on work-life balance. And I don't mean work-life balance like just freedom, but also how do you figure out how to be well in your body?
Yeah.
And so I recently started, as an example, trying to do 10 or 15 minutes a day of yoga. It's not about how long I do it for, it's the fact that I show up, or going for a jog, or trying to like go for that run. And I know running is a big part of your life. Was it always a big part of your life?
Definitely not. And a lot of this, and I'm sure for most people who are on some kind of wellness journey, started during COVID. Suddenly you're just with yourself with not much else to do. And I did this sort of like crazy program, trying a different thing a month. So I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof.
No, tell me about it. Tell all of us about it.
Yeah, so the Wim Hof method, have you heard of people they're doing more like cold showers, cold ice baths?
Yeah, I do cold showers.
Yeah. So this guy, Wim Hof, he's a Dutch guy. He actually had a show on BBC recently, but his method, the Wim Hof method, it combines some breathing exercises, like cold therapy, and some sort of like meditational. Initially, it's to help with just performance and things like that, but it really has an impact on your mental health. So when you have trauma or anxiety, as I'm sure, your body puts yourself into fight or flight mode very, very easily. And as modern people, the things that used to put us into fight or flight mode as Neanderthals or whatever were actual dangers to our life. Whereas now it's like, oh, somebody didn't reply to my text. And your body is reacting the same way as if you're being chased by a bear. So what things like the ice baths and stuff do is they widen the limits through which your body think that you are in danger. So you're not as stimulated to be in fight or flight mode when things happen to you that cause you stress and anxiety like they would have done years ago. So, but Wim Hof himself, it sounds like a cult. Sometimes I tell people and they're like, is it a cult? I'm like, well, no, but he's actually been studied by scientists because he was able to, in like the coldest ice conditions, he raised his body temperature. So I did that for a month, and then
So sorry, when you say you did that for a month, you took ice baths and cold showers.
Yeah, and his breathing exercises as well.
How do you make an ice bath at home?
You go to Tesco and buy 10 bags of ice.
Oh, like legitimately you went and got ice.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with the leftover ice?
There's no leftover ice. It's all in the bath.
So you pour cold water and then you put ice
in it, yeah.
Is it like a bath?
It's as long as it's below a certain temperature. There's like a guide for like what is effective under a certain temperature. And you did that every day? I didn't do an ice bath every day. I did an ice bath maybe like once a week, but I take cold showers every day. But a few years ago, I dated this guy he was quite spiritual, and he did ice baths, and he said he went on like a 8-day silent meditation retreat. This was way before COVID. And I said to him, you're insane. Like, I will never do that. I'll never go to those things with you. Like, you're literally certified insane. Do
you think he's watching this now and he's like, I told you so?
But now, like 8-day silent meditation, like before lockdown, to be silent and not interact with people for 8 days, that sounds insane. If you've always lived in a city, like that does not sound normal. But now 8-day silent meditation, I'm like, it sounds like heaven, please.
Ginnia, my dream, one of my dreams in life is to go on a 3-day silent meditation retreat where I don't speak.
Yeah.
And for anyone watching this and everyone watching this, you're going to be like, there is no way that you can do that. There is no way that I cannot. I mean,
we're literally speakers for our jobs 100%. And our lives.
And I've got to the point where my sister now is quiet time. She literally has to say that to me as if I'm like my 4-year-old niece. She's like, quiet time. Or my sister would be like, it's listening time. I'm like, what does that mean? She's like, no. Listen, you are not allowed to respond back. Or she'll be like, silent time. And then I'll be like, what does that mean? She's like, no. She's like, until I say start, you cannot keep speaking again.
Is your sister older or?
No. Oh. I'm the eldest of 4.
Wow.
No, but my family are just learning to manage me in a way because they're now like, you're clearly not going to just take the social cues that we're trying to throw at you. So let us just tell you to stop.
That's hilarious.
And you said that's what you do for a living. So, I mean, I asked you the question about running. We'll come on to that in just a second. But for those who don't know what you do for a living and your many hats or the many hats that you wear, do you want to give yourself an introduction?
It's a bit wanky, but I say that I work in tech PR by day and I'm a stand-up comedian by night. I say that it is what I do.
So you say the truth.
I say the truth.
Basically.
And on the side, I do writing. Yeah, That's all.
And so where did your wellness journey and your running journey fit into all of this? And I only say the running part for anyone who's like, she's not talking about running, why do you keep going back into it? Is because we spoke about a month ago on Zoom or Google Meets when we were trying to get to know each other, and we found that we had this common interest, which was running. Like the comedian bit, I think I'm funny. Turns out everyone tells me I'm not, but maybe I'll be able to do stand-up comedy one day. So I'm not sure if that's like a common interest.
We should run a course.
Oh my God. I would also like to go to a course and improv and just see what happens. But the running element is, I've always been really into sports until I neglected them in my life. And now I realize that waking up even on a weekend, on a Saturday, or going for a little bit of short jog or having some kind of exercise in my life is really amazing for my mental, emotional, physical, even financial sanity. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to lie, but I feel like I make more money when I focus on my exercise routine.
I've never thought about that, but it makes sense. And I think it just makes sense because everything falls into place when you do that. But so the month challenge thing, then I did a whole month in December of running 10K a day every day, which is about roughly an hour.
Did you ever run before?
So I very casually ran before. Like, I would maybe like run 3 times a month or something.
Why did you not pick an easier number like 1K or 5K? Like, who wakes up and is like, I'm going to run 10K a day? That's a little bit intense.
The thing that got me into the Wim Hof stuff is I saw a couple of videos from people who tried his method and then just sort of like did some crazy stuff physically that showed me that anything is possible. Not anything, but like it's mind over matter.
Okay.
And I think maybe because so this was December 2021 or 2020, whenever lockdown was. And because I think the world just seemed quite frustrated and I was like just worried about health and all that kind of stuff, I guess I wanted to just prove that it is mind over matter and you can
do it. Yeah, I mean, like a Nike advert. That's basically what they're trying to tell us is just do it. Again, not sponsored, but it could be.
Yeah, it could be. But then the month after that, I did no sugar for a month.
Oh,
but that was harder.
Okay.
That was way harder because
everything has sugar.
Yeah, everything. We ate natural sugar, so we still had fruit and some carbs, but no like added sugars.
Which is interesting because I have chronic migraines and I'm going through my ADHD journey, which I've now started speaking about quite openly online. Yeah. And in June 2022, I went on keto for about 8 weeks. Okay. I'm not a red meat eater. And a loved one of mine had done keto before. And I was like, you are, well, whatever you are, I don't want to be. I was like, I'm definitely not going down that route. But I tried and tested everything and nothing was really getting rid of them. And so I started doing some research around migraines and ADHD and just your mental health and just trying to get better. And similarly to yourself, I was like, it must be mind over matter. Like, if I put my mind to it, I can actually do most things, if not anything. And so with keto, I very much reduced my carbs. I reduced my sugar. Didn't have the same level of fruits, didn't have red meat, but really like upped my protein and cheese game. And I would say it's definitely not a long-term fix and I'm not promoting it as a fad, but I would say what it did for me in 8 weeks was, for me, in an isolated experience, I think it really helped to rewire my brain in a way that I feel very powerful. And anytime I feel like you're going up against a challenge, my God, Sonya, you cannot do it or you shouldn't do it. I go back to the fact that, well, Sonya, you wrote a whole damn book.
Yeah.
And you had to focus. You did keto
for
8 weeks.
Yeah.
And you had to focus. Yeah. And you started something from scratch and you're just carrying on. So I guess my point being is even like I couldn't do a 5K and now I can do a 5K, right? I don't know how you can do 10K in an hour. I'd take like 30 or 40 minutes to do a 5K. But it's not the timing isn't the point. The point is you start something and you're pushing yourself enough to finish it.
Yes. Yeah, definitely that. And I said to a comedian friend the other day, I was like, I know it sounds really lame, but I inspired myself because I was out for a run and I just was not feeling it. And it was just a 5K. And I was like, and then I thought to myself, hang on, I did this at this time. And then I inspired myself to like keep going, which is ridiculous. But I think
is it ridiculous to inspire yourself, or is that not what we're trying to build within ourselves? Like, it's really interesting that we feel like we need to inspire other people, or like we need to be a role model or representative, or like, but actually I love what you've just said is you need to be able to inspire yourself and remind yourself, look, you've been here before. These are the steps you take. This is what didn't work. This is what kind of worked. But ultimately, you know that you can figure it out. And even if you don't achieve that level of success, that's okay.
Yeah.
What we need to celebrate is starting and having milestones and like doing something.
Yeah.
So a good example is I like to take cold showers. But, and there's a big but, I'm not going to be like, oh, I can take a cold shower for a minute. No, but I could take it for 30 seconds. And last year I could only take it for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
One of my things I love to do is I like to read in a sauna.
Yeah. I read in the bath. So, yeah.
Same, similar. I don't like baths.
Okay.
I can't do it.
Because
I don't like, it's just, I find it icky.
Okay.
There is nothing pleasurable to me about a bath. Like sitting in your own ick in water, pretending like it's lovely because there's bubbles or candles. To me, it just doesn't, for me, that's not relaxing.
Okay.
But it is really relaxing for other people. But I only know it's I only know it's not relaxing for me is because I've tried it. It's not like I'm like, I've never tried it. I'm like, no, I've tried and tested it.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm into.
Right.
But I would have never thought that I would find the sauna relaxing.
Okay.
Because it's really hot in there.
Yes.
Right? So when I first went into the sauna, I couldn't do more than a minute. I was like, I will burn. Like, I'm burning. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll do a minute and a half. Then I'll do 2 minutes. Then I'll do 3 minutes. And then one day I was like, hey, what would happen if you read in the sauna? You know what would happen? Your book breaks. Okay? All of your books break. None of my books, just for any publishers listening, books are not made for the sauna. The glue does not. So all of my books are like broken.
Right.
But I've now gone from being able to do no more than 3 minutes in a sauna to doing 30 minutes in a sauna.
Wow.
And I read about 2 books a month.
Yeah.
Just in the sauna.
Wow. But it's interesting you say that because maybe these places are not. So with baths, I could only start fully enjoying it when I was reading because I find it really hard to like fully switch off and relax if I'm just like sat there doing nothing.
Maybe that's the problem. Yeah, maybe. Well, I haven't tried reading in the bath. I've tried like bubbles in the bath.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really get this either.
But maybe books are not made for saunas because they used to be just places where people would genuinely chill out and not read or look at things. And
So I think what we've really touched on is the element of chilling out and doing something for yourself and investing in your well-being.
And definitely what you're saying about things like keto or quitting sugar or doing little challenges, I think part of it is also, especially for women, like feeling like you have some form of control over your own body and actually learning to be in tune with your body rather than just carrying on without thinking about what you're putting into it or what you're consuming. Like with keto or all these diets, like nobody's going to do them forever. But even if you do it for like a week, then you have a better understanding of like, okay, if I put this in my body, this is how it reacts. Whereas a lot of people wouldn't have like a natural understanding of what makes you react in a certain way. And with women, you know, with all the hormonal changes, like you don't want to get into a rabbit hole and become obsessed. But like, you know, I remember when I first learned what a calorie is, like that is not something that is just knowledge, but it should be because it's literally the most important thing that you're putting into yourself.
But also good calories and bad calories.
Yeah.
Like it's better to have like peanut butter in your diet than having something which isn't going to give you that form of protein. Yeah. Right? Whereas before I'd be like, oh my God, peanut butter has so many calories. It's like, but it could be a good calorie.
Exactly.
Or like cheese. Yeah. Or yogurt. Like I love yogurt. And yogurt can be a good calorie. It could actually be a form of good protein, good fat if it's mixed in the right way.
But most of it is so high sugar.
But it's so high sugar. And it's just depending on like, you always look at like, oh, okay, maybe the apple is better. But actually a blueberries are probably better than an apple. But I also find if I take a step back from all of that, I really like what you've just said about taking control and doing something for yourself. Is that why you went into comedy?
I went into comedy because one of my best friends had a baby and the other one moved to San Francisco. And then I was like, oh, I've got all this free time. What should I do? So me and a friend literally went to a weekend workshop, stand-up workshop, because it was like a 2-for-1 deal. And we thought it would just help us build presentation skills, like public speaking, presentation skills. And then 5 years later, here I am, still doing stand-up, and so is she. So, yeah.
Tell me about that experience when you walked into that stand-up weekender. What is it that what are some like uncomfortable moments that you had? Because I can only imagine comedy is also very uncomfortable.
I think it can be, yes. I think, so the first exercise that the trainer did, we just had to stand up for a minute. This was before he gave us any tips or whatever. All you had to do was stand up for a minute and just talk about yourself. And people would run out maybe like 20 seconds in. They'd be like, I don't really apply, if you're watching Jay, sorry. I don't really apply like any of the things that he taught us anymore. But the one thing I learned is it's when you stand up for a minute and you talk about yourself, the first 20, 30 seconds, it's what you have programmed in your head to be like, my name is Ginnia, I do this. And then it's what you are portraying to the world, and it's like natural thing that's coming out. And then it's only the stuff that comes out after from your subconscious, which are going to be, if you're a writer, those are going to be the bits that are powerful. If you're a comedian, those are going to be the bits that are funny, like, because it's coming from your subconscious, and it's the unfiltered you that comes out after that.
So if I was to practice what you've said, hi, I'm Sonya, I do this, 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 and then I go and pause and I'm like, oh, and I love to have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And
or like what you're actually passionate about comes through, or because everything that you've rehearsed in your head about who you are and what you do and what you want people to think of you as, you run out of that because you've already just said
and
everything.
so you just speak about like maybe what's going on in your day or where you've been,
whatever. Yeah.
So
and then those,
you know, like I just went to a coffee shop before this podcast and someone loved my Crocs and now they're buying Crocs on the website, and I just think Crocs should therefore give me an affiliate link, but they're not replying to my DMs. You know?
thought about that before.
No, I haven't. This is literally 10 minutes ago, like before you came in. And then she was like, I feel your vibe. And I was like, I feel your vibe too. And she's like, well, you've got a strawberry dress on. It's a sign of like spirituality, and you're trying to reconnect with yourself. And I was like,
strawberries.
yeah. And I was like, what? That's literally the journey I'm on. She's like, well, add me on Instagram. I'm like, I'll add you on Instagram. And then we did. I was like, literally, I'm really good at picking up girlfriends.
Okay. Yeah.
That
Just
would
happens.
my point is, after I did my introduction, that's the first thing that will come into my brain.
Yeah.
And so you're saying by using that, I can then go and create a sketch at the back of it.
It's more like, let's say you want to do a sketch about a glass of water. Everything that we would brainstorm about a glass of water, all the first few things, it's just all the obvious stuff you would think about a glass of water.
Okay.
But it's only until you run out of those obvious things, then you're like, what's surprising about a glass of water? That can only come from like the subconscious, when you've like run out of everything that anyone would think about when they see a glass of water. That's where the funny stuff is.
Did you think you'd enjoy stand-up comedy as much as you did? I love the long pause. I'm like, I don't know if that's deliberate now because you're trying to be a comedian, or if that's like a real thing.
No, I don't know, because there's so much. I thought it would just be stand on stage and say some jokes, but there's just so much stuff associated with it, and the industry and all that kind of stuff, that I didn't think that I would ever get to see, because I didn't think I would do it properly.
And so what skills do you think you've built up after going on the comedy course?
Resilience. Stand-up, the thing that stand-up gives you, resilience, but it also gives you like both the thickest and the thinnest skin you could have. Like certain things I just really don't care about that I used to care about. Like, strangely and relevant for what we're talking about. So when I started stand-up, I was actually working at Google. And obviously that's a job that you work really hard to get to. And I had, slaved away at my corporate job for however many years, got to Google, did this workshop to like hone my presentation skills because I would get a little bit nervous sometimes when delivering really dull marketing presentations. But then I entered this world where like nobody gives a crap that I worked at Google. It was like, you're either funny or you're not. Like everything else does not matter. And still some of my best friends in comedy, like I have no idea what they do for money. Like, and it's just suddenly this world where the currency is a completely different currency to anything I'd ever experienced, especially as an Asian person, where our culture, it's so focused on your job, your career, your status, your money. Suddenly it was like, are you funny or not? And that was it. And it didn't matter if you're good looking, didn't matter if where you're from, like none of that mattered to begin with.
How did your family react when you said, I am going into comedy? Or when you present yourself as a stand-up comedian? Because I feel like that's a really big leap from, I did a weekend at a comedy course, I think I'm funny, I'm going to test it out, to I'm now a stand-up comedian by nighttime.
You know, I think actually my parents accepting that it was there to stay probably did help me come by that term. I think it took them a while, like definitely, but this is going into other stuff. But so I studied law at university, and my family have always wanted me to become a lawyer. And
why is that?
Because
unpack it a little bit.
Well, it's just
because you got the gift of the gab.
No, just I guess it's the only vocational respected job that I could have done because I was bad at science.
Oh, I see.
Bad at math. So the only leftover one was
my family
law.
Want me to be a lawyer too, but I think it's because I love to argue.
Well,
and they're like, you could have used your skills.
Yeah,
you could have win some cases.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm literally a public speaker, and I'm like, I debate for a living, but in different ways.
Exactly.
And I think now it's a running joke. It's not like something they actually mean. They're like, you could have been a lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could have been a lot of things, right? Not a doctor though. Can't do biology to save my life.
Exactly. Or numbers but even up until I was like 30, my dad would like every other week when we would speak on the phone, he'd be like, so are you going back to school to be a lawyer? Like, and it wasn't until I got the job at Google that suddenly he was like, oh, okay, I know that company. I guess she's doing a real job. I'm like, how did you think I was literally supporting myself?
And what were you doing at Google?
I work in PR. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've worked in PR for tech companies since I was like 22.
Okay, cool. And then you worked at Google. You started stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. You took it to your parents at a dining table and were like, guess what, Feeps? I'm now funny.
I just casually was like, oh, I'm doing this thing now. Because throughout my 20s and stuff, I did have like loads of random hobbies. Just like, I get bored quite easily. So I would do something random. Like I'd go and do like circus arts, fitness, or like, I don't know, something random. Like, yeah. So I would always have something to keep me occupied. So they probably didn't think that I would do this as a thing. But yeah, when I first started, they would just always be like, don't let it get in the way of your career, blah, 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 which I get.
Did it influence your decision to leave Google and do something else?
Yes. 1,000,000% yes.
And what did you do after Google?
Well, I did the same job, but I freelanced, essentially. Well, I ended up freelancing, but in the beginning, after I started stand-up, I still did PR for tech companies, but I tried to only work for companies that I truly supported their purpose.
Why was that important for you?
Because I don't know if it was comedy, and then just like the world started getting a bit weirder, but I just became a lot more cynical about like the corporate world and seeing behind like the corporate curtain. You're like,
do you think comedians think that way? I only say that because I listen to a lot of comedy shows on Netflix. I'm like, you are so funny. But a good underlining theme of a lot of comedians is the corporate structure, money, power, privilege, the systematic intersectional barriers that are created, the lack of accessibility.
Yeah.
Those are like, at least in the last like 5 years, I say there are
Yes.
common themes in
Definitely.
the comedy lenses. And also when you think about the concept of freedom, from my understanding of comedy, it gives you a forum to express views which people may or may not agree with, but it is a form of free speech.
Yes.
And sometimes they sometimes they say things which are a little bit like, I don't know if you should be saying that. But I feel like sometimes comedians are the ones who get away with it because maybe they're saying what people are thinking, but they're just brave enough to actually put it on stage.
Yes. I've heard that a lot from commentators, that comedy is like the new front line of culture wars. And yeah, it's tricky because even in the 5 years that I've been doing it, the world has changed so much, where like the world is so much more divided now that even comedy is this world of like war. What you're saying about free speech, can people say anything they want? Should there be limits? Blah, blah, blah. That sort of thing was not as prevalent 5 years ago, especially like before BLM and all this kind of like woke war. And it's just made worse by like social media and algorithms showing people what they will hate just for engagement purposes. Anyway, we're getting into a rabbit hole, but even like, it's funny because comedy, it's supposed to be what makes people laugh. That's essentially what comedy is, like funny stuff. But like you said, so much of it now is like, it's very rare that people can just make people laugh without those underlying themes of like power, privilege, race, blah, 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 gender, all this stuff. Like, I would love for the world to go back to a time when it was just slapstick, Mr. Bean, like, but I don't think.
But even Mr. Bean, like Mr. Bean, Friends, a lot of the content in there now will get you cancelled.
That's true.
I watched Friends for the first time in 2020.
Okay.
I'd like never really seen it before. I watched it end to end. There are a few things in there that I was like, this is not okay. But
Well,
20 years ago, it was okay.
So many people have come up to me and be like, oh my God, you're Julie from Friends. I'm like, oh, that's because she's the only Asian one with a fringe, but still. Like,
And how do you feel about that comment?
I find it funny. See, the thing with canceling,
But you
like,
find it, sorry, before we get into cancelling, you find it funny because you're like, haha, and you know better. You find it funny because you're like, what a silly little comment that you can make, and that's all you can think of, so good for you.
it's funny because it makes sense for people to say that because one, there was only one Asian character. So like, let's say somebody called me Cho Chang. Like, yes, it's a little racist, but also because the actual Harry Potter series only had her as an Asian, like, one, I can't really be offended because I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then going on to the cancelling element, cancel culture does exist.
It does exist.
And you work in PR, you would know more than anyone, right? You do two things that actually will
Yeah.
get you cancelled. One is PR and crisis management, and two is comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you navigate such a tough space?
I don't know. I feel quite stressed a lot of the time, to be honest. Not because of me, but just like I feel worried about like the future of where things are going. Like, I don't think things can just continue going as they are because there's got to be a tipping point where like it just gets too much for everybody. And then I don't know where it's going to go. Like, what is it going to be? People are just going to consume content that is just made for them, or what? Like, because everybody's complaining about some other thing that I don't know. I don't know. The corporate stuff is a whole other level. I think at a corporate level, it's not changed that much because at a corporate level, money talks, and it's always been that way. So as long as consumers, wherever the consumer of the thing will put their money, then the cancellation will or will not happen. That's like not changed.
And I agree with that. I think, you know, I'm a big, so you touched on the word purpose earlier. And I've spent the last few years really trying to understand my purpose and being in the space where I have a show, I'm doing podcasts, I have a business, I have a brand, I have a blue tick, whatever that means in the lives of everyday people. It means that I have to be really conscious, or at least, let me rephrase that. I'm trying to be really conscious about what I say, what I post, who I affiliate myself with. And so even brands that come and try to work with me, I'm like, well, what are your purpose? What are your values? What are your ethics? What are your drivers? And they're like, but who cares? Because we're going to give you 10K to do this post. And I'm like, okay, but
you got 10K for a post? No, I'm joking.
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer that question actually, but I don't not get 10K for a post. But 10K maybe is like a ridiculous amount to like fight over, right? But like for conversation's sake,
I get it. Yeah.
If someone's coming to you with an X amount of money, it's a really important question that you have to go back and be like, at what point are you going to sell your soul? And at what point are you going to fight the system, right? And that's a really important complication. And it's a privilege of a complication to have. So if I've got a company, like a fast fashion, unethical company that's like, we want you to do this for 10K, I then have to really take a step back to be like, okay, look, money is really important and that will pay my bills for the year. But, and there's a big but I don't agree with their values and I don't agree with their ethics. And so by not only being a part of them and promoting them to others and consuming their material, I'm allowing them to carry on with their behavior. However, as a person who is living the day-to-day life and there's a cost of living crisis, 10K is a big chunk of money. And what I mean to say is, when you get to a point of power and privilege and status, whatever that might be, and I'm by no means a celebrity, right? I understand where I am, but I am an influential person of some kind in some space. It actually becomes more difficult and challenging to know what side you're on. Because you want to be on the right side for you. But then your right side has to accommodate your day-to-day means. So that saying of like more money, more problems, honestly, that does exist because you have to take a step back and be like, hey, is this the right way for me to go? Does this align with my purpose? Am I contributing to a good, positive cause, or am I just amplifying consumption of something negative? Am I going to get cancelled for this? And all of these things go through your brain.
And it's crazy because if even you and I, as minority women, are thinking, are we going to get cancelled for this? Like, I can't even imagine what, not that I'm feeling sorry for straight white men, but like every decision they're making
do you think so though, or do you think, on a very serious note, do you think that people of privilege and power in like the top of the hierarchy and food chain actually think about how their decision impacts the next person? Or do you think it's because we're marginalized women and women of color of some kind that we're like, we know that to already be in this space, like you said, right, there was one Asian character in Harry Potter, one in Friends. We know the impact that we will have on other Asian girls, women, professionals, folk who are coming through the system. So we know that we owe it to them and to ourselves to actually show up and be better. Because actually, I'm conflicted in that statement. I don't know. I guess in summary, do we put the pressure on ourselves? Do we try and make ourselves more responsible than we need to be? Do we carry this work and burden and load to be like, hey, I've actually started running and I don't see a lot of people who run like me. So I'm now going to try and pitch this or get in a magazine cover or make an Instagram reel about it.
Literally what happened. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Or is it that, okay, well, now I have a podcast. I'm going to make sure that I try and do this regularly and consistently and diversify the people I speak to, because I want young brown girls especially to know that they can be on the TV screen and they can be content creators and they can be radio presenters. Is that what we're doing? Because to me, it sounds like we are.
I think there's definitely an element of that we are more aware of these things. So we're judging ourselves before we allow the world to judge us. But I definitely see so for example, it's not just about money. Sometimes I think it's also about the more you have it's not just about more money, more problems. It's like the more you have a platform, also the more problems. And often the platform doesn't come with money if someone wants to sponsor me. But like recently I posted I post stupid Instagram reels of my stand-up bits, and it didn't go like viral, but it got like tons and tons of views, tons and tons of comments, and 80% of the comments were like quite hateful towards me from men, like rapey, hateful comments. And there was a part of me, I had another clip that would have made people like that more angry. But like I got tons of followers that were on my side as well. And I did sit there thinking, should I post this other one? Because it's going to get me even more views and even more followers. But then I was like,
isn't that the game though? Isn't virality what people are now driving and aligning themselves towards?
yes, but those two clips are of a particular like feminist comedian persona that is pushing the button a little bit and is riling up, let's say, straight white men.
And that approach and that feedback and those commentary.
yeah.
Do you think comedy's made you more confident?
Yes.
Do you think comedy has helped you to be like, I'm going to do it anyway and just see what the feedback is?
Yes, I think so. I think you definitely have less fear. Yeah, there's less fear for some of these things. But then it's what you're saying, like the fear, it's a different kind of fear then. It's like, oh, I'm representing a certain kind of, like, if I post this, like, I don't care if this group of people hate me, but I don't want to make Asian women look bad. Or like, I don't know. It is, you're right. There's just like more pressure there.
Do you think you're a role model, or would you like to be a role model for Asian women?
Not in the sense of people looking up to me, but a role model in the sense that I've proven to many Asian women who maybe feel trapped in a corporate job or feel trapped by having to do what their parents wanted them to do, or to be able to break out of that.
And therefore, what is your career advice to Asian women who are watching, who are like, we want some tips, tricks, or like words of wisdom on how to break out of those expectations, that mold, either that we've created for ourselves or society has placed on top of us?
I think to begin with, like, explore just the things that you genuinely love to do without thinking about what that will lead to in terms of like a career or an output. Like if you, like, for example, my best friend who lives in San Francisco, like she inspires me because she loves to crochet and she's like a consultant, but she does that in a way that is just like her genuinely exploring it for joy. And she wasn't thinking like, can I have an Etsy store by the end of next month? Like she genuinely just was doing it for fun. And like, I know it sounds insane, but I think maybe like Asian women don't know how to do that.
No, I don't. I think
like,
generally,
just for fun? What is
absolutely.
that? Like,
I think Asians especially, I don't think we have a concept of fun.
Yeah.
Like I'm going through a little bit where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm having fun, but that's because everything I have fun with, I try and profitize off.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, this is fun. How do I get a sponsor? Right. Whereas like actually the conversations are just fun. But again, that comes from a lot of our upbringing. So what I'm hearing you say is have fun, explore new options, do things that are outside of your comfort zone, like you did when it came to running or ice baths or
Take
comedy.
a chance. Yeah. Do a class if you in something that you've always like. One thing that I found a little not frustrating, but like I love all my friends if you're watching, but sometimes my friends will say things like, oh, I've always wanted to try running, or I've always wanted to try hula hooping. I'm like, well, what are you doing on Saturday? Let's go and do it. Like, why would you say, oh, I've always wanted to do X, Y, Z? Like, if you have always wanted to do it, like, there's literally nothing stopping you from just trying things, especially if they're free. Like, obviously, there's other things that stop you, like costs and stuff, but there's always, like, free stuff in London or free stuff that you can just do yourself. It's not... Have you heard of a book called The Artist's Way?
I haven't, and I don't know if the audience have, but that's a really good recommendation.
Yeah, it's by a lady called, I think her name is Ginnia Cheng, but it's sort of like many like artists and directors and writers like worship this book, and it essentially is a guidebook to finding your inner artist. And I read it, I didn't follow it, but I explored some of the things that she recommends. One of the things is morning pages. You might have heard of that, like just freehand write 3 pages in the morning and it gets your brain stuff out. Anyway, it's all wishy-washy. But the one thing I found really interesting is one thing she recommends is taking yourself on an artist date which is reflective of what I guess modern therapy talks about as reconnecting with your inner child. All wishy-washy, but the hardest date thing she recommends is once a week, just do something that for you. Like, even if it's like you walk past a shop and you think it looks good, just go inside and like have a look around without buying anything. Or like, I don't know, if you walk past a graveyard and you've got a spare 5 minutes, just go in there, have a wander around, or I don't know, like buy a pencil or whatever, like just something small that it's just for you. And I think for women as well, especially mothers, like I'm not a mother, but I've got lots of friends who are, your identity gets pulled into so many other directions that you maybe lose track of like what you actually enjoy or what you find fun or your own identity. So that's quite a nice thing that I've tried to continue doing, just like something just for you. And it's not like a treat. It's not like self-care, right? Because it's not like having a bath or buying something. You just 5 minutes, like just you and nobody else as well. Like it's got to be by yourself.
Well, I think that's great advice, and that's a great note to end on. So Ginnia, if anybody wants to connect with you, follow your comedy and or just your curious nature, how can they do so?
Follow me on Instagram at Ginny Pie, because I like to eat pies.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No,
Thank you so much. It was sporadic, it was random, it was spontaneous, but I'm really glad that we got to have a conversation. Remember, we want to cover all and every topic which basically exists under the sun. So if you want to come on, drop me a line, hello@lmfnetwork.com. Remember to like, subscribe and share. Tell your friends, put it all over the internet and show us some love, because honestly, we just want to know that people are watching, they're liking, they're listening. And most importantly, remember that this is something I started from a place of, I don't know if anyone's going to listen and watch, but I'm going to do it for myself. And eventually I'm hoping that we're going to impact one person. And so I believe this is something like our over 20 episodes now. Yeah. So it's exciting that we've been able to hear your story, everyone else's story. And we definitely want to hear your story. So like I said, drop me a DM, put it in the comments, and just drop us an email, and let's just get you in the studio, be that physically or virtually now as well, and just see what we have to say.